Hey everyone, thanks for stopping in. I'm hoping today's video will give some clarification to flower letters. Now I have letter 3 and 4 right here, and I also have 1 and 2 right here. This first card was kind of important, I think, for me to read to you, and I did not. I don't believe I did. I didn't go back and look at the very first video, but I'm going to take care of that right now. I think it will help, maybe, and then just like briefly go over letter 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 are new. So it says the Lily Clara collection is set in the Western United States during the year 1884. Frisco, Utah's Horn Silver Mine is the most lucrative silver mine in the world. When spirited New York dressmaker Lily Clara Moore answers a matrimonial ad, she heads west for an adventure that quickly turns out to be much more than she bargained for. There's a scandal afoot in Frisco, one that could bring down the entire Horn Silver Mine. When Lily Clara finds herself at the center of it, the only thing that can save her is her own tenacity and the letter she's been exchanging with very handsome Pinkerton agent Matthew Hinkman. Like, I know I read that, but I don't think it registered until I saw that and was like, oh. Throw in an outlaw chase, a vengeful vigilante, and a good old-fashioned Spanish treasure, and the Lily Clara collection is a wild Western like no other. That's what the front of this says. Now, the back is basically, what you receive. So I know I read that myself, but I don't think I read it to you guys. So letter 1, which is right here, which was the, and I don't want to read every single thing to you or the letters because I know a few of you are getting this and I don't want to spoil it, where it was the ad about, a mail order bride, which was what they did back then. Right? Yeah, mail order bride. This is Lily Clara. Just trying to keep this stuff in order. So then this was the letter. Gambit is his last name. That was his first name. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember what his first name is. So the letter that Lily Clara wrote to him saying, I'm interested. And then this also included the Sylvester Gambit is his name. Her, his response about, come on, come out west from the Horn Silver Mining Company. And then the last one, which was like a telegram that I believe she sent to him, like, I'll be ready to depart on April 12th, blah, 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 blah. So this was the last there, and then the postcard. So that was all in letter 1. Right? Yes. So that was the first letter. That's why I think I was slightly confused, because I did not recall that information. And then, like, trying to explain things, I was like, huh. All the information about flower letters will be in my description box. It's $12 a month. The first one, there's always the discount code. You can get it for 10 change. Free shipping in the U.S. Basically, you're immersing yourself in a collection of stories, of letters, telling a story through letters. And they have, how many different ones? 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 or 4 different ones that you can get. So then letter 2 came along, and the very first thing I saw was the Pinkerton Detective Agency, and I was like, well, where does this come in? Well, it does, because it tells you on that little card that, about the Pinkerton Agency. And then this letter, which confused me, which was basically, if I could open it, from addressed to Matthew Hinkman, who is mentioned in the very first one. And this is from Bill Pinkerton, who I guess, owns Pinkerton Detective Agency, and Matthew Hinkman is an agent. So that's what this, and this was a front, back. So this was a pretty long letter. Just basically, you know, laying out, you know, what the issue is about these ladies. So this is part of the Bright Stars. I showed you this. So that must pertain to these ladies. And then we had I shared this with you, the telegram of April 4th, 1884 to Bill Pinkerton from Matthew Hinkman. Like intrigued about this whole thing right there. So that was letter 2. And then letter 4 came and letter 3 didn't. So they had to send me letter 3, which I have right here. I have not looked at this. So let's look at this together. So you get a nice postcard that you could use or save. And then there is a letter in here that's from Lily Clara to Katie. I don't know who Katie is. So Lily Clara is signing this off, your most affectionate sister. So Katie must be her sister. And this is dated April 15th, 1884. This is 3 pages, both sides. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I'll read you a little bit. Some of these are hard to read with the handwriting, so I will do my best. It says, Katie, darling, I know I promised to mail you a letter at every station along my journey west. But if I'm being honest, there hasn't been enough to write about. Even now, I'm at a loss to tell you anything interesting. The scenery is the same, except for the skies, of course. The skies are wide open and bluer than you can imagine. Yet this has not turned out to be the adventure I was hoping for. In fact, I'm growing quite restless. With all the stories I've heard and read about the Wild West. What is that? With all the stories I've heard about with the Wild West. I suppose I assumed there would be at least a little adventure along the way. I really don't have anything to complain about, of course. I didn't realize that Sylvester was providing... See, this is very confusing. I didn't realize what Sylvester was providing when he told me to purchase a first-class ticket until the porter showed me to my own private and sumptuously decorated sleeper car. Honestly, there's a velvet and silk. No, that's what I'm saying. This is very hard to read. Honestly, there's velvet and silk everywhere on the train. I'm sure you would love it. I'll see if I can convince Sylvester to wire enough for a first-class ticket when I send for you. And then basically, how are you feeling? She must not be feeling well, the sister, so she's asking her, how, how you're feeling. I have no idea what all this... She says, since the trip has been so uneventful, I've spent most of the time in my cabin putting the final touches on my wedding attire. I know you'll want to see the additions, so I've included a final sketch with the embroidery design I added. I don't know what that is. About having access to the parlor car. I started reading a little bit more of the letter. Like I said, I'm not going to read you every little bit. She's just been going on, and she started to mention about an employee of Mr. Gambit approached her while they were in Chicago, gave her a box, and some ruckus went on. She was basically, I don't know if they were trying to take her, kidnap her, what, but basically he shoved a small box at her, asking me, Lily Clara, to tell his boss he was sorry and that he tried to make it back to Frisco soon. You know, they chased after the man that was trying to gave her that box. It doesn't seem like he was trying to get on the train. And she said that there, I don't know if there was somebody else. She said the varmint tried to subdue me in return, but I wasn't about to be used as payment for some strange man's debt, even if he was my intended's employee. I don't understand that. I kicked the giant oaf as hard as I could in the ankle really, as he was enormous, and ran for it. He did wind up getting her and trying to throw her over his shoulder like they did back then and try to, go off with her. And a very handsome gentleman came to her rescue. Matthew Hinkman. How interesting. Saved the day. She says, so my rescuer, one Mr. Matthew Hinkman, saw me safely onto the train to Salt Lake City and informed me those men work for an Irish mob boss by the name of Mike McDonald, and that I was lucky he came along when he did. Of course, he didn't need to tell me that. Apparently, this Mr. McDonald is a villainous mastermind who runs Chicago's underworld and pretty much everyone else in the city. Mr. Gambit's man had most likely been gambling at the store, which is Mr. McDonald's establishment. Mr. Hinkman said the man probably lost soundly and wasn't likely to get out of town until he settled his debts one way or another. Basically, so there I was, deprived of my escort just as my journey west was starting to get interesting. Thankfully, fate is on my side today. And she says, Katie, because just as that thought entered my mind, Mr. Hinkman informed me too he was heading to Salt Lake, and as luck would have it, on to Frisco after that. He wondered if I might accept him as a suitable escort instead. I'm certain there isn't a more suitable escort alive, and I told him so. So that basically... And basically, let me see here. I'm not, like I said. And she said, speaking of being engaged, that tiny box Mr. Gambit's man shoved at me had a wedding ring in it. And it says, darling, I don't mind one bit telling you, it's the ugliest, most gaudy abomination I've ever set eyes on. And you know I've seen my share of repulsive wedding rings at Madame Lovelace's establishment. I don't mean to sound ungrateful for Mr. Gambit's generosity, of course. Heaven knows how much the center stone alone cost, but I couldn't even bring myself to try it on. Dear me, you know I'm determined to do everything in my power to make him happy, but Katie, if wearing that horrid ring is essential to his happiness, I'm afraid we may start our life together with an argument. Don't worry, though, I'll be kind, but for sheer practical reasons alone, I won't wear it. How on earth could I handle silk and taffeta and chiffon without shredding them to bits on such a conjugal atrocity? Anyways, do take extra good care of yourself, dear heart. Your most affectionate sister, Lily Clara. Okay, so that introduced somebody else. Interesting. And then the next thing I see here, I guess, is her wedding dress. Right here. And some of the details. And then on the back, she has the Sega O Lily embroidery pattern, I guess, right here. Interesting. Okay, so she's giving her designs of her dress. And then this little card here is like an advert for a home physician. I'm not sure what that's about. So that was letter 3. So that explains a little bit about the travel and introducing her sister, Mr. Hinkman, how he gets involved there. Then we have letter 4 that is here. We have another postcard. We have another letter. Oh, this is going to take forever. And it's another long letter. My darling Katie, April 27th, 1884. Another letter to her sister. When was the other letter dated? So I can try to track what's going on here. This is April 15th, 1884. And this is April 27th, 1884. So let's see what this has to say. My darling Katie, I don't know how to write you this letter, but I know I must, for the consequences of it concerns us both. I've only been in Frisco for 1 day, but knew I needed to write to you right away. Yet even now, I'm uncertain as to whether I'll be able to afford to post this. You see, contrary to what I had planned upon my arrival in this waterless, heathen-strict wilderness, I'm not a married woman, nor do I have any notion of becoming so. I will start at the beginning, dearest, as none of this will make a stitch of sense to you otherwise. After what happened in Chicago, I never dreamt I'd find further adventure on my journey west, but it seems trouble has followed me all the way to Frisco, and in the worst way. We changed trains in Salt Lake City and boarded the Utah Central Railway before heading southwest towards Frisco. We'd been traveling for half the day and were just leaving a town called Leamington, right? Leamington, when Mr. Hickman and I made our way to the dining car for lunch. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very pleasant lunch, as I finally found the opportunity to tell him I was on my way to Frisco to be married. He congratulated me, but then excused himself and left the car in such an abrupt manner. I was left wondering how on earth I could have offended him. So much has happened since meeting him, Katie. Mr. Matthew Hinkman is the most excellent of gentlemen, and the last person I wish to harm in any way. I had just made up my mind to go after him and make amends, if I could, when the train suddenly lurched and the wheels began to squeal, making the most ghastly racket. The next moment, several gunshots were heard. The dining car broke into utter madness. When I finally managed to enter the next car, rather than finding Mr. Hinkman as I hoped, I found myself staring down the barrel of a pistol. A masked bandit shouted for me to get on the floor. I refused, of course. I was wearing my magenta velvet and taffeta polonaise. I wasn't about to destroy dozens of hours of some of the finest pleating and embroidery work I've ever done simply because a meter, like, I don't know what that is, like himself wanted what was in my handbag. I told him as much as I tend to do. Of course, if I'd been carrying more than Mr. Gambit's dreadful ring, dearest, I might not have been so brazen. But I ask you, what better way to avoid our first fight as husband and wife than to have his hideous ring stolen? Basically, just stare down. Then the letter continues on. Before I noticed any more, Mr. Hinkman burst into the car from the opposite end, a pistol in his hand, yelling for the bandit and his 4 other comrades to drop their weapons. The moment the bandits saw Mr. Hinkman's Pinkerton badge winking at them from his other hand, they blew past me, scrambling over each other to try to get off the train. To tell you the truth, I was as shocked as they were. Not once in all our conversations since leaving Chicago had Mr. Hinkman ever hinted at being a Pinkerton agent. You know, Mr. Hinkman asked if she was okay, all that good stuff. Then she continues on. When we finally reached Frisco, my spirits were even more dampened when I saw how much Sylvester had exaggerated the town's attractions. It's nothing but dust and wind and wide open spaces out here. They do have glorious sunsets, and it's spring, so there is a little bit of beauty. I'll give them that, but there's hardly a tree in sight, and the wind is always blowing. There isn't any water for drinking or bathing either. The water that is here must be freighted in from neighboring town of Milford, which is 15 miles to the east. She continues with, you must purchase water by the bucket, which leads me to the next deplorable thing about this place. Because of the lack of water, everyone quenches their thirst at all the saloons. There are 22 of them. Gambling halls, brothels, opium dens. The entire town is rampant with the wildest of the deadly sins on full display to offend every living creature. Wow. Basically, what do you think greeted me almost the moment my boots hit the dusty street? A lynching. And she says, and yet I still haven't told you the worst part of my story. Basically, she gets, Mr. Hinkman said he didn't feel right just leaving her and escorted her to Mr. Gambit's house, which he did. He leaves and she summons up the courage to knock on the door. There was a maid, a housekeeper that Mr. Gambit hired for Lily Clara, greeted her. Mr. Gambit was not home. He was at the mine. She showed her to the room he prepared. It was immaculate, done up with velvets and brocade. She said as gaudy as the ring. She busied herself changing into her wedding dress and attending to hair and all that good stuff to get ready for her wedding. Okay, so that continues. Then the housekeeper, Mr. Gambit must have come home. The housekeeper summoned her. She met Mr. Gambit, and she says, when I finally met Mr. Gambit, I wasn't disappointed by his appearance. He is handsome, medium height, with sandy blonde hair and brown eyes. He looks younger than I imagined, and his smile is pleasant. He appeared to be even more nervous than I was, for his eyes dashed all around, looking everywhere but at me. On the other hand, I only felt as though I swallowed a fresh bowl of Mrs. Frisbee's garden worms. The preacher was in the parlor. Sylvester offered me his arm, and that, my darling Katie, is precisely when all our plans came crashing down around me. She said as she entered the parlor, she noticed a scar on Mr. Gambit's wrist, the same scar with the same symbols that she saw from the train bandits on their arms. She said she looked again just to be certain, and sure enough, it was surrounded by those sloppy stitch scars. And basically, that was it. She was like, not happening. I'm not marrying you. And she basically threw the ring at him, and out she went. She went upstairs, packed her stuff, and said she would send for it or have it sent to, I guess, whatever hotel she was going to, find and stay at. She did all that. She came across a lot of undesirables trying to find a place. She has no idea in Frisco where anything is, what anything is. I don't know what kind of money she has with her. So she was trying to figure out her way. She finally says she she states, when I was finally free of all these other people that were touching her and staring at her, they'd been drinking, they were, prostitutes and things like that. I turned the corner onto a more respectable street. 3 women stepped out of a nearby saloon. They didn't look like the sort I just come from, so I asked them for help. Thankfully, they took pity on me and led me inside. Now, I wonder if that's the 3 sisters, the bright stars. You never know. Basically, they made sure I was all right, and then one of them asked if they could see me home. That's when I found myself blinking back tears and telling them my entire predicament concerning Mr. Gambit. You came all the way to Frisco to marry Sylvester? The oldest of the 3 asked. When I nodded, she swore and called him a yellow-bellied swine. It seems I was completely deceived by him in his letters. He is a very wealthy man, one of the Horn Silver Mine owners. But why rob trains then? For the thrill of it? I don't understand. I think she's assuming he was on the train, which may be why he wasn't there or when she got there. And she continues, after hearing my plight, the ladies were about to take me over to Milford with them so I could tell my dilemma to the sheriff there. But then I remembered Mr. Hinkman. He had never said he was leaving Frisco right away, and I knew I could trust him. So I asked if they might help me find him. I told them he was a Pinkerton. They assured me they knew who he was. Let me just see. They told her they knew right where to find him. What seemed like only moments later, the women had brought me to a respectable-looking hotel. They then wished me luck, mounted their horses, and rode off. I didn't even have the chance to thank them. When I finally entered the hotel, it didn't take me long to spot Mr. Hinkman through the crowded dining parlor. The room fell silent once everyone saw me standing there in my wedding clothes, but I didn't care because the moment Mr. Hinkman saw me, he stood and started toward me. And Katie, there was a look in his eyes I've never seen before. I'm not sure what it means entirely, but I must tell you that when I saw it, I felt overwhelmingly relieved that Mr. Gambit turned out to be a train robber. So now you have it all, my Katie, the whole strange and peculiar tale of my Western adventure. It hasn't turned out the way we intended at all, but I'm not giving up hope. There's got to be another way to get you out of New York before the winter. I'll write again as soon as I have a new plan. And that is the letter from Katie. Interesting. Okay. Then let's see what this says. It's a lot of letter. Here, Frisco Town Crier. Little paper. And this is about the train. Okay, open up. About the train coming into Frisco. So, you know, just some information there about the train and what took place on the train. And back here is something about Lily Clara, Society News. Among those welcomed to our town yesterday was one Miss Lily Clara Moore, our own Sylvester Gambit's bride-to-be. If the rumors be true, however, it appears she is Gambit's bride never-to-be. Pinkerton agent Matthew Hinkman was also among the newcomers, hot on the trail of the infamous outlaw sisters, the Bright Stars. Unfortunately, they gave him the slip last night without much trouble, which begs the question, how good of a Pinkerton are you, Mr. Hinkman? For those gentlemen yet to behold the latest exhibition of Miss Lottie's ladies at Le Petit Chateau de Versailles, tomorrow is the final appearance. That's basically that. Interesting. And then, you know, just a little advert. So that basically tells a different kind of a story, that, you know, she gets out there. It's not what she thinks. He's a train robber. Is he a mine owner? What's going on? So, like I said, I have all the letters here now, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It makes a little bit more sense. A little confusing. I think the Bright Stars sisters were the ladies that helped her out, and then decided they were out of there when they realized that Hinkman was there from the Pinkerton agency, probably looking for them. So, you know, could be interesting. I'm curious as to what the next letter will bring. Is she still stuck out there? Do her and Sylvester Gambit reconcile? Not? Do her and Matthew Hinkman get together? Who knows? Like, it is interesting. The letters I just find very difficult to read. You really have to take your time in reading them. There's a lot of run-on sentences. You know, obviously, you know, that the English is fine. It's just the, you know, breaks in sentences and stuff like that. And the writing makes it very difficult to understand. But you can read them. So far, that's letters 1 through 4. Hope that makes things a little bit more cohesive. I think it does for me a little bit more. So now I'm interested to see what comes in the month of June. Letters 5 and 6 will come in the month of June, and we'll see where this takes us. I hope you enjoyed this so far, and will continue to watch this. And thanks. Have a nice day, everyone, and I'll see you all in tomorrow's video. Bye for now.